Hello and welcome to Line Sniper Fight Night. I'm your host, Dave Milhouse. Today I have with me Cody Saftic, FightNetwork.com. Find him on odds.com. You can find him on the Dogger Pass podcast. Cody, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. As we were joking, long time watcher, first time caller. Finally happy to be here, talk fights with you. And they've given us a nice little offering. Not only do you have an exciting main event, an exciting all-around entertaining card, a lot of good spots that I think that we can be profitable on, and it's a free card. Not like last week where you had a lackluster pay-per-view. All of this can be viewed free of charge. So I mean, the UFC coming in with a nice little offering, and I think we picked a great week to finally link up and do something together.
Couldn't agree more. This will be on ESPN live from Las Vegas, Nevada, in the small octagon, which is always interesting. A nice little curveball for the bettors. Let's start with the main event. Curtis Blaydes, Derrick Lewis. This is one I see going one way and one way only. Basically, it's just going to be a beatdown. Curtis Blaydes is going to be able to pin this guy up against the cage, take him down at will. Look, Derrick Lewis has that one-shot knockout power. And a 52% takedown defense, which is kind of generous considering I've never even seen him really stuff any good attempt. So I don't think Curtis is going to have any trouble just grinding him until this one's over. But with a heavy price tag like this, it's hard to say where the value actually lies. So I'm going to have to ask you, how do you see this fight going? Where do you see the value, Cody?
Well, I completely agree in your assessment of Curtis Blaydes being the victor based on the wrestling. I mean, what works at this stage in the game? It's 2021, and we've realized since the early 2000s that wrestling is the dominant art, and Curtis Blaydes is able to do that for 25 minutes. As a heavyweight, that's a big thing to have that kind of cardio, but training at elevation, having the cardio, having the wrestling, being able to shoot multiple attempts. You look at his fight with Alexander Volkov, he shot 25 takedown attempts, landed 14 of them. And so with Derrick Lewis is not stuffing any takedowns, let alone 25 attempts, let alone being able to just get back up and keep working. So I completely agree. I see this fight going one-sided. There's one thing, though, with Curtis Blaydes is that he does have high ring IQ. Sometimes he likes to take his time a little bit. So he won't necessarily go out there, score a takedown, and finish his opponent in the first round. A lot of the times these fights get dragged out to third round, fourth round, fifth round. Again, going back to that Volkov fight, won the full 25 minutes. He has fought opponents in the past that were considered chinny, guys like Alistair Overeem, and even though he's knocking them out, he knocked him out midway through the third round. So if there was a lean to try to get a better price tag than the minus 450 that you're getting on Curtis Blaydes, the over 1.5 round is minus 185. So looking at that over 1.5 round, Derrick Lewis, if he's going to finish a fight, it's going to be early, you would think, with his power. But again, look at a lot of Derrick Lewis's finishes. They're these late finishes. They're these third-round knockouts, right? So he's a bit of a late finisher himself. Curtis Blaydes a bit of a late finisher himself. Both guys are fairly durable enough that I think that he's just going to neutralize him with the wrestling, hold him up against the cage. It's, I always consider wrestling to be like football's version of the run game. It just kills the clock. It just kills time off the clock. You're in possession, you're in control, and you're ticking away the clock. That's what cage control does for you. That's what Curtis Blaydes does with a lot of his takedowns. And as long as he just kills 7.5 minutes, then we're going to look to hit that over 1.5, which is a better price tag. But Curtis Blaydes looks to be parlay material. He looks like the kind of guy that you could feel good about, you could feel safe about. And I agree. We're on the same page for that main event for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the bettors agreed too. They moved this line from the low 300s up to 455. And I think it's just going to keep rising. Personally think this could easily close at minus 600 plus. Because Blaydes will literally never be in danger because he's always grinding on you. Lewis cannot stop a takedown like we just said. So, yes, he can get up. He does have that power, but Blaydes literally lets you get up and just keeps position, then pulls you back down. I don't know how many times Lewis is going to want to get up. Like, I could see him quitting in this fight at some point, but not before 1.5 rounds. It's going to take a lot more grinding to get Lewis just to say, fuck this, I'm out. That over 1.5 is a decent look. And to be quite honest, I think Blaydes by decision at plus 335. I don't think it gets there. I do think Lewis will gas. But, he goes the distance quite often. Lewis is a pretty hesitant guy, and like you said, Blaydes might actually do the same thing, not rush anything. I don't think it goes the distance, but there's a little bit of value on that side of it as well, I believe. So full agreement, Curtis Blaydes mops the floor with Lewis. Let's get on to the co-main event, Caitlyn Vieira, Yanakunitskaya. This is a tough one. I think both girls have a clear path to victory. For Vieira, it's to get this to the ground. Kunitskaya with her 33% takedown defense, pretty bad. Not a lot of skills on the ground. Vieira is a stronger girl, should have no problem holding her there, especially in the small cage. Now we're getting into these grappling positions much faster. But on the flip side, Kunitskaya is just a better striker. Not only does she land more per minute, she lands at a higher accuracy. She gets hit less. She's that kind of stick and move on the outside kind of fighter. And if you can do that for 3 rounds, you might be able to outpoint Vieira. So I think both girls have a very clear path. A little bit of value possibly on the Kunitskaya by decision. I've seen as high as plus 375. But ultimately, I think Caitlyn Vieira wins this fight. And she probably does it in style if she can get those early takedowns. What do you see happening in this co-main event?
Yeah, so the co-main event, I looked at probably having a pass on it, and I based that completely around the number, because you mentioned it's probably going to be a closer fight. Both girls have merits that you got a grappler versus striker. I favor the grappler. I favor Caitlyn Vieira to eventually get this fight to the ground. And when she does get the fight to the ground, I think she's going to be a little bit stronger, BJJ black belt, positionally sound. As long as she's not chasing submissions and giving up a good position, she should be able to just keep this fight on the ground. But for a minus 200 price tag, for a minus 220 price tag, it does have a lot of variables in that with Caitlyn Vieira, you got to look at, the history of her time in the division so far. And a lot of it's been a little bit underwhelming, sorry. And what I mean by that is her debut against Kelly Fashholtz. Low-level fight. Kelly Fashholtz only had 2 fights in the UFC and fanned out, never fought again, actually. But it's a split decision victory. There's moments where she doesn't look great, but it's a work in progress. The Ashley Evans Smith fight, again, work in progress. The Sarah McMahon fight, she loses the first round. The Kat Zingano fight, it's a split decision, it looks spotty in spots. The very next fight, Irene Aldana knocks her out in the first round. And then her last fight, she comes out against Sahara Eubanks. And again, there's spots in that fight where she's getting grinded up. There's spots in that fight where she does look a little bit suspect. So I'm behind her. I think she's getting better. I think she's somebody that could really be a threat in the division, in another 3, 4, 5 fights. But I don't want to be getting put in a position to be paying a 2-to-1 price tag at this stage where there is still some unknowns. And with Yanakunitskaya, you mentioned she's got the experience in the division. She has fought maybe some of the bigger names, but she's also a girl that fought for a world title at 145 pounds against Chris Cyborg. She's at a Greg Jackson's camp in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Jackson Wink, well-trained, usually comes in with a good game plan and does have that striking edge. She's even dating Thiago Santos, which, just to put things in perspective, like they live combat. This is what these people do. She's going to be well prepared. She's going to be well coached. She's going to have a good game plan. And if she can keep this fight standing, she could out-volume her and land the better strikes, the better telling blows, and come out on the right side of a close decision victory. So again, it's a fight that I think probably does go the distance. But Yanakunitskaya, already the underdog, if you were to take her by decision, like you mentioned, plus 375, that's a nice looking price tag. But overall, there's 15 fights on this card. There's a lot of spots that I feel a lot more confident in than this spot, which is, close. I do favor grappling. I do favor Caitlyn Vieira. But for this kind of price tag, I think I'd rather just pick a more trustworthy spot.
Yeah, so full agreement there. We definitely do lean towards Vieira, but the price tag it's all priced in. That advantage is definitely priced in. I think the value is on the dog. So let's get down to Charles Rosa and Derek Minner. This fight I hate. I know you like it, so I'm just going to let you take it away, and I'll add my little 2 cents at the end.
Yeah, I love this fight. So it's very similar with Derrick Lewis. Is that what does he do well? Well, not a whole lot, but he's got that huge KO power, and yeah, he could land it. And we've seen Derrick Lewis win fights he had no business winning on the basis of that power bailed him out. Derek Minner is very much the same way. He's got a nasty submission game. He's a very opportunistic guy. He will try to finish you as quick as humanly possible. He's always going to be a threat in there against anybody because of the kind of style he brings, the kind of pace he brings. He's very dangerous for 5 minutes. But beyond that, and this is an entire career worth of fights for Derek Minner, 40-plus fight veteran. If it works in the first round, he gets that first round finish. If it doesn't materialize for him in the first round, the second round you see his game fall off completely. I'd like to say he's got cardio issues, but he really doesn't. It's just that he completely puts his foot on the gas. He's like an American-made muscle car. If you just jam that gas, it's like, whoa, baby, you are rolling, and then you run out, right? So
Yeah.
Is so much ferocity out of him. It kind of zaps the energy. When he goes out there against TJ Laramie, you got to realize TJ Laramie is a 21-year-old kid. TJ Laramie is very young. He's making his UFC debut. It's a huge moment for him. He got signed, and it was his mother had passed away, and it was the date that she had passed away was her birthday, and it's a huge emotional moment for him. He gets the contract, he jumps into the UFC, and he takes on a 40-fight veteran in Derrick Minner. So even though he's a big favorite, even though a lot of people think he's going to win, it's like Minner's seen everything twice already, and Laramie's still in those early stages. Can you catch a guy like that? Yes, you can. Some of other Minner's wins. It's the same thing. Can you catch a 6-5 opponent? Yeah. Can you catch a 3-3 guy? Yeah. He fights a lot of those lower level guys. When he's fought in the upper echelon, guys that are durable, guys that have good submission defense, guys that have a good chin, guys that have good cardio, in that he doesn't stick them in the first round, that's when they prevail. And for as many problems as Charles Rosa may or may not have in his own game, cardio's not one of them, and it doesn't appear that he's the kind of guy that you're going to go out there and finish early. He's been finished one time in his pro career, and that was a third-round finish by Shane Burgos. Now, we all know Shane Burgos is a banger. He's got huge power. He's one of those guys that can finish you. He also has a great gas tank. And Charles Rosa actually won the first 2 rounds against Burgos before getting knocked down in the third round. So to me, that's not the end of the world. But he's also been the distance with Yair Rodriguez. He's also been the distance with Bryce Mitchell. He's also been in a lot of sticky situations with guys that were maybe a little bit above him and lived to tell the tale. So if Derrick Minner goes out there and tries to wrangle his neck with a guillotine choke, or tries to, take his back and sink in a rear naked choke or a head and arm choke or a triangle choke all within the first few minutes of the fight, I mean, Charles Rosa is A Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, B, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Ricardo Laborio, and training at American Top Team. Like, you don't think they got guys like Derrick Minner that are putting him through the pace, trying to submit him in the first round? Like, I think he'll be well prepared for this. And it's nothing against, same thing with Minner. Like, does he have a cardio problem? I think he just burns himself out. Does he have a durability problem? As much as he finishes guys, he's also been finished. Like 10 of his 11 pro losses. And why that is he just crumples over and gets tired and allows himself to get finished. So Rosa's not traditionally a finisher, but this is actually a spot where Minner will just allow himself to get finished from just exhaustion. Similar to what you were saying with Derrick Lewis in the main event, right? It's not that Derrick Lewis has durability issues, but 25 minutes is a long time to have Curtis Blaydes on top of you. He might just not, quit. I hate using the term quit. They are pro fighters, but he's 36 years old. He's got a spotty gas tank, and he's in there with a world-class guy. So, when the door presents itself, he might take it. Minner's the same way. If he doesn't submit you in that first 7 minutes of the fight, he kind of topples over. His body language just screams exhaustion, and I think Charles Rosa will pick up on that and put him away. So I got Rosa inside the distance.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that. My lean would be towards Rosa. I'm having a lot of trouble deciding if there's any value on it. And there probably is. Rosa has fought the tougher strength of schedule and looked better doing it, I will say. Bryce Mitchell, yeah, he went to decision, but he got mopped for 3 rounds. Had Bryce on his back for 3 straight rounds. That wasn't a good look. But I don't think Derrick Minner is anywhere near that level. So I'm going to be absolutely forced to agree with you here. But Minner is a little bit dangerous, so I'm not that comfortable with this minus 200-ish, minus 190 price tag. For me, it's just an easy pass, but maybe I'll get back to the tape. I still have some time. Let's take this on to Chris Dawkis, Alexei Olynyk. This is a fun heavyweight fight between 2 guys that can almost make light heavyweight. We'll probably see them both weigh in around 230 pounds, so a little bit more agile than your average heavyweights here. Dawkis, though, this guy has pretty powerful hands for someone who's weighing in light. And every time I see Olynyk fight, I think, my God, this guy needs to retire. But then, he gets it to the ground, and he's definitely always in these fights. So this is a tough one. I do lean towards the favorite. I think this is a pretty good matchup for him as, like I said, he is a lighter heavyweight. So who better to give him than a 100-year-old also lighter heavyweight? And yeah, I think his hands will just be too fast for Olynyk. But if Alexei takes this down, I don't know if he's going to be able to hold up on the ground. So there's a couple things I'm looking at. The under would be one, and it is getting juiced to the max here. It's all the way down to minus 175 on the under 1.5. I think that's pretty reasonable because he's going to come out cracking Alexei, and what happens there is either he drops or he shoots for a single. And at that point, now we're getting into finishing territory for either guy. So I am leaning towards the under. I am leaning towards the favorite. Do you have anything on this fight you'd like to share with the fine people?
Well, again, it's another spot that I literally completely agree with the assessment. I think the UFC knows exactly what they're doing here, and they got a young, exciting prospect at the heavyweight division. Heavyweight's thin. Heavyweight doesn't have a whole lot of young competitors, and they don't got a lot of exciting guys with this knockout power. And so they want to build a guy like Chris Dawkis. So they're giving him a main card slot against 43-year-old Alexei Olynyk, who, as you mentioned, not only is he 43, but he's just a smaller guy. He actually used to fight professionally at 185 pounds. He also has almost 90 fights to his credit. He's been around the block 3 times over. He's not a big heavyweight in the slightest bit. And the one thing he does, the one ace in his back pocket is, the neck crank, the scarf hold. Like if he does get you to the ground, he's got old-timey BJJ that he could try to grab a hold of one of your limbs and submit you. But with Chris Dawkis, he's not just a one-trick pony. Not only does he have the good boxing, not only does he have the knockout power, the good footwork, the mobility, standing, but he's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt himself. So again, we've got a one-round fighter in Alexei Olynyk. Dangerous, very dangerous for the first round. He wings bombs. He tries to close the distance. He tries to get a hold of you. He tries to rip you to the ground. If it does not work, then you see his gas tank fall off completely. I was impressed with him maybe in the Fabricio Verdum fight, but that was a case of Verdum hadn't fought in 3 years, and Olynyk greased out the first 2 rounds and then completely got tired and exhausted. By the time Verdum woke up and realized he was fighting, it was a little too late. Dawkis shouldn't be in that spot. And I mentioned it when I was talking with Paul. I said, think about this realistically, right? Why wouldn't the UFC book Alexei Olynyk versus Andrei Arlovsky, right? 2 old-timey veterans, been around the sport, in their 40s, fun heavyweight fight. Both guys could arguably win that fight. And then book Chris Dawkis versus Tom Aspinall. 2 young heavyweight prospects. Because that's not how you build a prospect, right? What they would like... Exactly. Here we've got, just like boxing, we've got an A side and a B side. The A side's the young guy the UFC wants to market, the UFC wants to put over, the UFC wants you to tune in and see that guy. And the best way to do that is to let them be a name brand opponent. Like say Olynyk, been around the block, we all know who he is, but this is a very difficult spot for him for sure. He's been knocked out 6 times in the first round in his career. He's been knocked out overall, I believe, 9 times. We've seen it happen multiple times already. Chris Dawkis fits that mold. So I think Dawkis goes out there, scores himself another first or second round knockout, and the ball keeps moving for him. And for Alexei Olynyk, man, I would just like to thank this guy for his service, all the entertainment. But boy, oh boy, like you've done your part, man. You don't owe us anything. Like you could hang them up, and quite literally nobody would fault you for that.
Yeah, I hope he does. Not because I don't like him. I just hope he, has a little bit of his brain left by the time his career's over, because he's taking big shots every single fight from huge men. I don't know how long that's sustainable, honestly. It's getting a little bit creepy to watch, like you just almost feel bad for him. He takes licks. So yeah, I mean, we both see this going the same way. I suppose I might have to get on Dawkis or the under, but nothing locked in yet, so we'll just lean it up on that. Next up, Imavov, I don't even know how to say his name, versus Hawes. This could very well be fight of the night. Very exciting, high pace, a lot of power on Hawes here. And we do have a very reasonable submission-looking type game with striking to go with it from Imavov. Sorry, I'm the worst at this. Some of these Russian names always evade me. But yeah, I mean, this guy is pretty reasonably good, and Hawes is very explosive. So going into this, I thought I'd be betting Hawes, but by the time I was done my film, I wanted to lean the other way. So I'm completely confused, and I'll just kick it over to you. Should be a great fight.
Yeah, so this fight was actually booked to happen 2 weeks ago, and what ended up happening, or about I think maybe a month ago, and what ended up happening is Phil Hawes tested positive for COVID, so they just rebooked it. And Imavov at that time was a plus 120 underdog, plus 130 underdog, and I'm touting him as the underdog of the week. Like, this guy's got more than a chance to go out there and pull off the victory. And unfortunately, the fight doesn't happen. So now they rebook it. I'm hoping to get that underdog money again, and now they've got it lined up closer to a plus 100. So more of an even money, not really a dog play, but I think a lot of people have looked at Imavov and realized Nasruddin Imavov's 24 years old. Like, he's still young. He's still getting better. He's still improving. He's still got a long ways to go, but there's a lot that you can like out of him. He's one of these Dagestani fighters, knows how to wrestle, but leaves Dagestan, ends up going over to France and being in a Fight Factory Paris, is the same gym that produced Francis Ngannou, the gym that produced Cyril Gagne, the same gym of Taylor Lapilus. Like, they've done a really good job with a pint-sized portion of pro fighters to really make these guys have a lot of improvements, predominantly with the striking. So being able to wrestle already, being Russian already, having that in your back pocket, and then adding the striking skills, falling in love with them in the way that he has, I think that he's one of these well-rounded guys. Now, is he hittable? Yes. Does he have some striking defense issues? Yeah, I will agree with that. Do you want to be having striking defense issues fighting a guy that's heavy-handed like Phil Haas? Jeez, not exactly. I will admit the guy cracks. You don't want to be in that spot. But I think the kid's chin checks out. His cardio checks out. You've seen that in the fight with Jordan Williams his last time out, that it's a hellacious, high-paced fight, but he keeps with it the whole time. And so we talked a little bit earlier about how, maybe a guy quitting. And yeah, they're not quitters, they're pro fighters, but unfortunately sometimes adversity gets the best out of you. It's the reason I'm not a pro fighter. I'm sure I'd be labeled a quitter. It's not everybody has it. It's the difference between, the champions, the Max Holloways and the Uriah Fabers and the guys that'll break two hands and continue fighting. Like, that's what makes a world champion, and other guys are just very talented athletes. Phil Haas, to me, is a very talented athlete. Here's a guy that wrestled in the same team as Colby Covington and John Jones. Here's a guy that's very dynamic, great footwork and great speed and great ability to change levels and, very heavy-handed. But ultimately, the spots in his career where he's been tested, he's folded up. And so you go back to his time he fought on The Ultimate Fighter against Andrew Sanchez, and you can make a bunch of excuses for him. But ultimately, after the first round, he tires, doesn't really want to be there anymore, allows himself to lose the decision. The Lewis Taylor fight, first round, looks awesome. Second round, tires, gives up the guillotine choke. Then he fights Julian Marquez. First round, Phil Haas looks good, man. He's athletic, he's quick, he's powerful. In the second round, he tires, and he gives up a nasty head kick knockout. But then you look at his entire run since then, right? Because now he's been labeled, in my opinion, someone who's looking for the door, someone who fights very hard in that first round, then fades off. Then he beats Michael Wilcox, only it's a first round finish. So you don't see that second round, anxiety out of him. You don't see that second round potentially quitting out of him. Then his next fight, Dominic Schrober, it's a first round finish. Then he gets Yuri Fraga, it's a first round finish. Then he's on the Contender Series with a first round finish, and him versus Jacob Malkoun is a first round finish. So now it looks good, 5-fight winning streak, 5 first round finishes. But that doesn't change what we've seen from him when he gets extended out of that first round. And so this is a very entertaining card that the UFC's put forward, because there's a lot of these guys on the card. There's a lot of these guys that go for it in the first round, try to put you away. If they're successful, it's very entertaining. If they're not successful, the other guy puts them away, and it's very entertaining. But when I see what Jordan Williams put up with, when I seen the shots that Jordan Williams took, and for 3 full rounds of that he took against Nasruddin Imavov, I think to myself, surely Phil Haas is not going to take that much damage over a 15-minute period of time. So Phil Haas is bang or bust. He's either getting a first-round knockout or he's folding up midway through the second round or into the third round if he makes it that far. But I believe Imavov was the dog play a month ago when the fight was booked, and nothing's changed. I think that Imavov is still the play in this spot. So I'm hoping that, his youngness, his eagerness is still a little bit green. Hopefully he doesn't get caught with that big punch early, but if he can just make it out of that first round, I think he'll go into cruise control. And if you're the kind of guy that likes betting fights live, this is a good spot where you can bet it. If Phil Haas goes out there and looks good in the first round, he always looks good in the first round. He's got Michael Johnson effect, where Michael Johnson pretty much always wins the first round too. And then the second and the third rounds, his game just completely falls off a cliff. So you might be able to get a really good price live if Imavov loses the first round, and then the second and third rounds he can come back and win. Something worth looking at anyways.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I always look for hot starters, especially when they're up against someone who starts a little bit slow. And then if you get that live line on the slow starter and you really get a much better deal. I find it hard to believe that Phil Haas will get lit up in round 1. So I would imagine he's ahead on the scorecards at least 2-3 minutes into this fight, and that's where I would look to pull the trigger on Imavov. I keep fumbling that word, Imavov. And I 100% agree that's the one thing I was looking for here. So Phil Haas inside the distance, also interesting because he might not be able to put it together long enough. And we see that at only a plus 115. So they're basically saying it is bang or bust for this guy. Totally agree. The dog is very live, but I would rather have the better number. So let's take this on to another heavyweight bout. We're absolutely littered with heavyweight fights here, and I love it. We've got Andrei Arlovski, Tom Aspinall. This is a fight I'm very interested in. And just like Phil Haas, we were saying we don't really know if he'll have that cardio. This is another problem I have with Tom Aspinall. He just keeps finishing everybody too quick. And I highly doubt he's going to finish Arlovski as quick as he's finished all these cans this whole way up the ladder in his career. So will he have the gas? Will he be able to have his mettle tested for 3 full rounds? That's the real question here, because he is going to out-volume Andre. He is the better striker. He does have more volume, obviously. It's just the way he fights. Andre's pretty methodical, takes his time, picks his spots, and he's not worried about falling behind on the scorecards. He likes to survive, pick his spots, and then take care of business. So I do think Tom will be ahead here, which would open up a nice live line on Andre if we see Tom getting tired. But other than that, I do believe that there's a little bit of value on Tom Aspinall here. The heavyweight division hasn't seen too many boxers of this quality, speed and movement. And although he doesn't have a ton of experience, when I'm watching the tape, I just think he looks like a much better striker than Andre. So one thing that I found very interesting would be Aspinall by decision. I've seen up in the plus 360 range. That's a little bit high. If he doesn't get him out of there right away, we don't actually know what we will see out of Tom Aspinall. So although I don't know if this goes the distance, I think knocking out Andre is easier said than done. So for someone who is especially known as chinny about 10 years ago, this guy has held it together pretty well, and his chin is held up over the next decade since people were questioning him. So plus 360 by decision for Aspinall, very interesting. But ultimately, I just think he'll be ahead or knock him out. So I don't mind the minus 250-ish price tag. What do you like here?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's heavyweight fights, so always a little bit tricky. And second of all, it's Andre Arlovski fights. The old dog always comes through when he needs to. He's generally always the underdog in all these spots. And he's a great gatekeeper for the UFC. He's a great barometer test. And where you bring in these young guys, you bring in these guys that maybe we're not fully sold on, or they need that one big fight, they need a marquee victory, and Andre tests them. And all the guys that proven to be legitimate knock Andre Arlovski out, whether it be the Stipe Miocic, whether it be the Rosenstrucks, whether it be the Alistair Overeems, whether it be any of these heavy-handed guys that fight Andre Arlovski. Those guys, they're legitimate. They get the first-round knockout. They get those early knockouts on them. All the Felipe Linzes of the world, the Tanner Bozes of the world, turns out these guys are gun shy. Turns out these guys don't have that big power. Turns out these guys don't have high ring IQ, or they're very green, or for whatever reason they can't put it all together. He comes out on the other side of the victories over them, usually by decision. I mean, Andre's not much of a finisher at this stage of his career. So it really falls down to who is Tom Aspinall? What does Tom Aspinall bring to the table? If you're sold on Tom Aspinall, then you're sold on the fact that, yeah, he's one of the better boxers in the division. He's got a heavyweight pro record. He moves very well, good footwork, packs tremendous heavy hands. And then he's also a former sparring partner for Tyson Fury. And if you've ever read any of the accounts of people sparring with Tyson Fury, whether it be Rico Verhoeven, whether it be Malik Scott, all these guys that have been in camp and then have sparred with them have almost universally always taken a tremendous amount of damage and fanned out at some point. Being in the ring against Tyson Fury is just a task for anybody. The fact that this guy's hanging in the same room, getting rounds with him, he's a credible boxer. So how does that translate into MMA? Because he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. The UFC's mashed him up very, very soft, in that Jake Collier physically was very, very soft, and he gets the first round knockout there, and it's predictable. And then he gets Alan Badeau his next time out. It's another short-nosed replacement who's definitely not in his league, and he cruises over there. And so to fight Andre Arlovski is a monumental jump from those two guys to Andre, and that in itself is going to be a big task. So if you aren't sold on him, he's just another one of these guys that is not ready for the big dance, and Andre's going to expose him. If you are sold on him, he's got the boxing that he's going to clip Andre. He's way faster than Andre. Andre's slight defensive lapses, if they rear their head here, he's going to clip them. And I find myself being in that school of thought. I like Tom Aspinall. I really like what I see out of him. I think that he's young. This is what the UFC needs. Chris Dawkis's, Tom Aspinall's, they need these young, mobile guys that pack good power, and then have also spent a lot of time working on their ground game. They're well-rounded. They're picking up skills all over the place. Yes, I will fault him that he's been finishing guys so quick that he could have a cardio problem. A lot of heavyweights have cardio problems. A lot of guys that are young into their career, 27-year-old prospects, have cardio problems. Why couldn't he have a cardio problem? So here's the thing with that theory, though. Andre Arlovski pushes no pace. Like, quite literally, yeah. He's not trying to take you down. He's not trying to out-volume you big time. He just mostly sits there, waits to counterpunch a little bit. And why it worked on Tanner Boser is Tanner Boser never let his hands go. He was kicking Andre, and then Andre would periodically explode the 2 or 3 punch combination, maybe glance one of them, maybe land one of them, and then those 2 punches were more than Tanner Boser had landed the whole round. It was a really poor game plan from Boser, and even then it was a close decision. Online was pretty split. A lot of people thought Boser won, but just nothing happened,
I did.
right? Nothing happening doesn't tax your cardio. It doesn't lead you to get tired in those later rounds. There's just not enough going on. So Aspinall, the pro boxer, he loves just standing at boxing range and throwing punches. That's not going to tire him out. He's going to need the Curtis Blaydes of the world who are going to ride him like a miniature pony, and then we're going to see if he's got cardio issues. He needs an Alexander Volkov who's going to throw 130 significant strikes. Then we're going to see if he's got cardio issues. But a guy like Arlovsky who is going to throw 40 or 50 significant strikes and not going to shoot a whole lot of takedowns and not really, lead the dance at any stage. Like, I think he'll be okay with that. So I agree. 250, it's a heavyweight fight. You never love betting 250, but this is a spot where I agree. I agree with the line. I agree with Tom Aspinall. I think if you want to chase that, the Aspinall by decision looks good. It's a huge plus money price tag, but I just got this gut feeling that the guys that are legit knock out Arlovsky. The guys that are not legit, they might squeak out a decision. And I really do believe that Tom Aspinall is a legit fighter. I think Chris Dawkis could be in a similar situation as well, where like maybe he could catch Andrei Arlovsky if the two were to fight. But regardless, the UFC knows what they're doing. They're trying to build these two guys up. That's why they've given them good, favorable matchups. And this is another heavyweight fight. We're on the same page.
Yeah, love it. Andre's just going to stand there and mirror him, switching stances more than he throws punches. That's just going to make Tom too comfortable. Plus, Tom's a good wrestler too. So, yeah, I think he's just better everywhere, younger, more explosive. I don't mind the minus 250. I try to ignore the fact that they're heavyweights and, there's all this added volatility with the weight. He's just the better fighter, and I'm happy to pay that price tag. Let's talk some Jared Gordon, Danny Chavez. This is another one where I can make a case for both fighters. If you believe Jared Gordon can get this to the ground and garner enough control time, then I can see him winning on the scorecards. But if you don't believe that, you got Danny Chavez here, who I think is the better striker. He's got wicked leg kicks on him, which I love. His hands seem a little bit faster, actually quite a bit faster. But Jared Gordon can also take a beating. So this one probably goes the distance and is a very fun fight. Do you think Jared Gordon's taking this to the ground no problem, or is it going to be Danny Chavez's time to shine?
Yeah, I think Danny Chavez's time to shine. So prior to his UFC debut against TJ Brown, a lot of people are high up on TJ Brown and just, nasty ground game and good wrestling. And he look at all the submission attempts he shot against Jordan Griffin, like so many takedowns. Sorry, it's like people are really high on him going into that spot. So when you looked at Danny Chavez, he has 2 pro losses, and both times it was his ground game that let him down. So I checked out these interviews with Danny Chavez, and everybody's universally talking about the same thing. Well, TJ Brown has good wrestling, good ground game. This Danny Chavez guy is making his UFC debut relatively short notice. Both of his pro losses was let down from his ground game. It almost just like writes itself, right? But I would look at these interviews, and Danny Chavez would bring it up himself all the time, like, yeah, I was let down by my ground game once upon a time, but I've been working on it, and like no one's taking me down. I've been working on it. Goes in that TJ Brown fight. I back him. I'm going to believe you, Danny Chavez. He really seems sold on this. I've been working on my takedown defense. It's not going to be my problem now going forward. And I seen him in the TJ Brown fight. It was like, he was absolutely right. His hips look really strong. His ability to scramble away looked very, very solid. And then he would work the leg. He'd work the leg. So now the second, third, fourth, fifth time you're shooting on the guy, he'd stuff it even easier because it was like you're having a lot more trouble exploding off your lead leg into the takedown attempt. So I really liked what I liked. Now, in the third round, he starts to fatigue a little bit, but he took the fight at short notice. And TJ Brown's the kind of guy that pushes a good pace, right? So there's a lot that you can like out of Danny Chavez. Now, with Jared Gordon's my guy because he's one of these guys that's got skills everywhere. He's got good hands. He's got good technical BJJ. Brown belt under John Danaher. That speaks for itself. His wrestling's pretty good. Great cardio. But it's like he's a little bit older. His body's just been through the absolute ringer. If you know his personal story, he's kind of just been in there. Bad knockout losses. And now I just see him like really slowing down. Like his last fight in particular just looked like he was walking in quicksand. Like all of his movements were super labored. His cardio is not quite as good as it used to be. His chin not quite as good as it used to be. Like he gets overwhelmed a little bit. And so you made a great point when you started off the breakdown. It's like, will he be able to get this fight to the ground? And there's the $1 million question. Because I think if it stays standing, Danny Chavez has got it. If it does hit the ground, then you got to bank Jared Gordon. He's got the higher level experience and he showcased a good high level grappling and relentlessness and good pace. But yeah, I'm really sold on Chavez's takedown defense. I think he has addressed those issues. I think he's come a long way, and I think he's going to be able to keep this fight standing. And then when the fight does stay standing, that's when you're going to realize he's going to move twice as fast as Jared Gordon. His hands are twice as fast as Jared Gordon. The leg kicks will be there all day long. His cardio should be better in his second fight in the UFC. His confidence should be better in his second fight in the UFC. His experience level and his confidence, all these things that, getting your UFC debut out of the way, and for a sophomore outing, you should see a better version of the guy. And what I've already seen from him, I liked. So it's nothing against Jared Gordon. Again, he was my guy. I love banking Jared Gordon, but you got to be a realist here. You can't just pick a guy because he's one of your fan favorites, or I really respect the way this guy fights, I'm going to put money on him. It's like, no, man, it's a little bit different. You're putting money on him. You got to have some actual faith. And with Jared Gordon, I can't bank on the chin. I can't bank on the cardio anymore. I can't bank on just the speed, the athleticism. And this is stuff he's acknowledged himself. He watched the tape of his last fight and he had tweeted it out. He was like, wow, I'm really slow in this fight. I need to address that. It's like, yeah, absolutely. So how do you address that? You're mid-30s. You've taken a lifetime of damage. How do you suddenly become faster? Right? Is that something you can address? I don't know. Whereas Danny Chavez, it's like, this guy is naturally a lot faster, and I think his confidence is coming to his own. So sign me up for Chavez on one of the closer fights of the card for sure, but I'm going to side with him.
Yeah, so we see this the same. I would say that Jared Gordon will have some good moments in this fight, but ultimately he should be falling behind on the scorecards. I personally don't believe he can spend most of 2 rounds in control on the ground, and so I do believe Danny Chavez will get ahead on the scorecards. He will land more per round. He's going to light him up with those leg kicks, and like you said, his hands are twice as fast. So if we really believe that Gordon's going to struggle taking this to the ground, then that means that the line is a little bit light on Danny Chavez, in my opinion. And I do think it is. So I do believe there is some value sitting there on Chavez. The one thing with Gordon is, we talked about guys quitting, and maybe that's not the proper terminology because they aren't quitters. But Gordon ain't going nowhere. He's gonna have drool coming out of his mouth before he's done. So should be a good fight. It should probably go all the way, and I would imagine it's more like a 29-28 because Gordon's going to have some moments on the ground. So, Drakkar Klose, Luis Pena. This is a fight I like. I think the line is a little bit low on Drakkar here. Look, he's not nearly as tall. Pena's got 6 inches of height, 5 inches of reach. He also, Pena fights southpaw, so that kind of does take away a little bit of the leg kick action. But if you're committed to leg kicks, you're gonna throw him against any stance. And he's got little tiny skinny legs. This guy barely has to cut any weight to make 155, whereas Drakkar Klose is probably walking around at 185, cuts 30 pounds. He's thick, he's strong, he's got big legs on him. He can throw hard kicks. And you know what? He throws more volume. He lands more accurately. He hits harder. He gets hit less, well, percentage-wise. So I just think he's better pretty much. I can't say everywhere. Pena's better on the ground. But will it get to the ground is the million-dollar question, and I don't really think so. I watched a lot of tape on both these guys, and when we're watching close, he gets put in a lot of bad positions. He has submission attempts for days on him, but he stays patient. He gets 2 hands on whatever limb he needs, and he makes his way out of these attempts. And somehow, even though he gives up the position, he does have pretty good submission defense. And so that leads me to believe that he's just going to be lighting Pena up on the feet. Pena likes to kind of hang out there and mirror a little bit. His fight with Kama Worthy, he barely moved, and neither did Worthy. Worthy didn't even lift his feet off the mat. And so you got all day to set up your shots and be comfortable and move around. And he was still hesitant. Drakkar Klose isn't going to let you be comfortable. He's going to be right up your ass, man. So I think he's just going to light him up, to be honest. And I think this line's a little bit short on Drakkar. How do you feel about this fight?
I agree. I mean, Luis Pena, I think, is a busted prospect at this stage. I mean, yeah, he's still young. He still could make some improvements, but he never really achieved that frame. 6'3". He was initially fighting at 145 pounds. And the dynamics of that is just like, wow, he's going to be so long, so strong, so lanky. And unfortunately, he couldn't quite make the weight. So you see him at 155, but now he lacks the physical strength. So every time he fights, he's a big favorite. And pretty much every time he fights, he underwhelms. Whether it be the Matt Frivola fight, whether it be obviously his last performance, even his win over Steve Garcia. I mean, he spends nearly 15 minutes on this man's back and can't stick him with the submission. The Kama Worthy fight in the second round, he gets his back, he gets the position he wants, he's just unable to finish. And then his striking, it just, the physical strike's not there, his movement, it tires out. His footwork is not great. He had spent all these camps at American Kickboxing Academy and still never really achieved that potential that everyone had set on him after coming off the Ultimate Fighter. And by the way, this goes back to a Phil Hawes situation where it's like you've seen him in spots before and he always comes up short in those spots. It was the same thing, like Luis Pena was on the Ultimate Fighter and I believe he pulled off due to like staph infection or an injured toe or something, but he pulls out of and everyone said when he got yanked, man, that was the tournament favorite. Oh, that guy could have won the whole show. So they gave him Mike Trezano for his first UFC fight. Like, here you go. Fight the Ultimate Fighter champ. And it's like he loses the split decision. So right there, it's like, okay, he wasn't quite the best guy in the season as we believed. But then since then, it's like they've given him very winnable fights. And for the outside of the Matt Wyman fight, who is, again, Matt Wyman should have been in that spot to begin with, but outside of that one fight, you don't really see a whole lot. What you do see is he can take the back. And when he does take the back, his legs are so long that he immediately throws a body triangle in. Once a guy's got a body triangle and he's on your back, they just kill the clock away at you. So in the Steve Garcia fight, the whole time he's got him he's on his back with the body triangle, but he can't get the submission. The Kama Worthy fight, the one bright spot is that second round where he takes his back, right? But then he abandons all that. He tries to strike. He gets tired. That loses them for the fight. Jacker Close should win this. Jacker Close, better striking. I think the leg kicks are going to play dividends against a guy with a long stance like that. I think that, his cardio is good. His chin's going to be more than fine. He'll have a good game plan. He's a strong guy. The one small thing that I do worry about is, again, you got a good eye because you nailed it yourself, is that Jacker Close sometimes puts himself in bad spots in the grappling realm, right? Sometimes he'll give you a position and then take his time and work his way out of it. So what I really don't want to see is that he gives up his back, because I've seen him in spots where he'll give it up. If you do that against Luis Pena, he just body triangles you. Once a guy's got that backpack, it's like he's not going anywhere. So now you lose a round. Now you might lose 2 rounds. And here's one problem with Jacker Close. If he's down 2 rounds going into the third, he's not the kind of guy that you can be like, all right, baby, we need to knock out in the third. Like, he doesn't knock out anybody. He's a decision machine. All of his wins are by decision. He is a decision guy. He hurt Beneil Dariush. That was badass. But then eventually was knocked out himself in that fight. I'm not saying he doesn't have a ton of power. He just doesn't have a whole lot of finishes. So you don't want him going down 2 early rounds because of some poor grappling decisions, and then all of a sudden need a finish that won't materialize. However, I don't think it's going to be 0-2 going into the third. I think at the very least it's 1-1, and Jacker Close, better cardio, more experience, better ring generalship, especially in a small cage. Bully this guy up, hurt this guy, cause him to get tired, and pull off the victory. So I'm going to take Drakkar Klose, and then of course with Drakkar Klose, if you try to improve the line on him, you will take this guy by decision, because I don't see him knocking out or submitting Luis Pena in the same breath as well, right?
Okay. Yeah, so he has been a decision machine, but I think this level of competition's a little bit low. Coming off a fight with Benny, and now you're going to fight Violent Bob Ross. I don't understand the matchmaking, to be honest. I think he is live for a knockout, so I'm not going to play with trying to make my line any better. I think under minus 200 is quite a bit of value sitting there. So my worry would be the body triangle, like we just talked about. He probably puts himself in it at least once, but when he gets out of it, which is probably when the bell rings and he goes back to the corner, he's going to come back, get right in the face, and start landing big shots. The kid's got some pretty good power. So we're almost running out of time here. Let's bring up one last one. Let's go with Julian Arosa, Nate Landwehr. This is a fight I see being very close. And I do find this a little bit interesting. We were just talking about getting the lines a little bit better. Both of these guys by decision, I think the line's a little bit high. We have a total of 2.5 with basically even juice on both sides. I disagree with that. I think it is more likely to go to decision than it is to be finished. And so I'm kind of interested in a Nate Landwehr by decision. Kind of. Let's hear what you have to say. Maybe you can talk me into it.
Yeah, if I was a pro fighter that needed to cut a quick 10 pounds, what I would do is bet on Nate Landwehr by decision because his fights are so hectic that they could go to decision. Absolutely. You know, the Darren Elkins fight's a great example of that. It does go to decision. Nate Landwehr wins that
Yeah.
decision prop, but it's like the process from ding, 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 round number 1 to ding, 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 the end of round number 3 is just looks like a car crash, man. And that's how Nate Landwehr fights. I mean, he's a wild man. He's in your face. He's wooing. He's leaving his hands down. He's inviting you to hit him, and he's unloading bombs on you. Julian Arosa has been knocked out in the first round 4 times in his career. Overall, he's been knocked out 5 times in his career. And again, by some good guys and some lower level competition guys that weren't really known for their power. So the path of victory of knocking him out is certainly there. But on the flip side of that, the guy's long. He's rangy. He's got a nasty head kick. And you've seen his fight with Sean Woodson. It's like, that was a fight where his chin checked out. It held up. And boy, oh boy, can this guy do a lot of positive work. I mean, he's got good volume. He's got sharp, accurate striking. His grappling is, I wouldn't say a work in progress. He's got the kind of frame that he's not one of these short, stout, stocky strength guys. But it's like he's got good opportunistic grappling. He can tie it all together. And his cardio checks out. So if you don't knock him out in the first round, like a lot of guys have, it's like he don't go nowhere. He just keeps coming at you. There's a lot that you can like from this. I wish there was a book out there that offered you a prop on what's going to win fight of the night, because this has got early front runner potential written all over it. You always know you're going to get a performance out of Nate Landwehr, win or lose. And with Julian Arosa, he's got the kind of volume to make this a fun, exciting fight and keep up with him. But when you look at Julian Arosa as well, this is his 3rd time fighting in the UFC. I don't mean 3rd time like 3rd fight in the UFC. I mean, he's been physically cut from the promotion 2 prior times and is on the 3rd stint with the promotion. He always comes up short. He never gets that UFC victory that he needs. And his fight with Sean Woodson was supposed to be no different. He's on short notice. He's a big underdog. He's yet to really get that marquee win under his belt. He's just more of a regional scene standout kind of guy. And he goes out there, he gets decimated in the first round with Woodson. In the second round, Woodson's beating him up, but starts to tire. And in the third round, Arosa takes over and just for good measure gets the submission victory. That's all great. That's all a good moment. But like with Nate Landwehr, as the former M1 global featherweight champion, he's used to fighting in these 5-round fights. And when you see him fight in Russia, routinely he loses the first round. And then just he ain't going nowhere. Just keeps coming at you and he breaks these guys down. Cardio's not a problem for him. Chin, I know Herbert Burns knocked him out, but realistically, rewatch the fight. He runs his own head straight first into an oncoming knee. Like, come on, things happen. Chin is generally checked out for him. Submission defense checks out for him. Cardio checks out for him. Yes, bit of a slow starter, but I think the small cage will be the big difference in this fight because Julian Arosa loves to stick and move, and Nate Landwehr likes to chase, right? He likes to move on mostly straight lines and chase his opponent around. You give a guy a lot of surface to work with, Arosa could just dance around the outside and, pick him away, try to use his speed advantage, try to chip away, use the jab, hit, move. Stick, move, stick, move, stick, move. But this smaller cage, it's like Nate's eventually going to cut you off, close off the distance, and land something. And when he does, I could see him getting the knockout. I could see him, not materializing it, but doing enough work, wooing enough times that the judges are like, okay, I like the forward aggression and the bigger shots landed by Nate Landwehr, that he could potentially, pick up a decision victory as well. But the bottom line is I'm going to go with Nate to train and get the win here as well. Love what I see out of the guy. He's not a top 10 contender. He's not a future world champion, but he is just going to give you fun, exciting fights every time out.
Yeah, I mean, he's nothing like Mike Perry, but in the sense that Mike Perry's never going to be above average, but always be exciting. I think Nate Landwehr definitely falls into that category. I do see him pinning Julian up against the cage quite a bit in this fight. That's kind of where I started to lean towards the decision because, he is long and trying to stick and move. Like you said, he's going to have to cut off the cage, and that's where we're going to get in the clinch quite a bit. So I was hoping that would burn enough time. But ultimately, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with this one. But I do lean towards Nate Landwehr, and I do think there is some value on this decision prop. I'm going to have to take another hard look at that. I mean, what are we talking here? Still in the 300s? That's dropping, actually, down to 290, Landwehr by decision. I still think that's quite a nice price tag. But ultimately, coin flip kind of price tag. You might as well not risk it. Just take the Nate Landwehr money line. All right, that'll do it. Thank you for joining me, Cody. And we have some more fights coming. I mean, the UFC is not slowing down. We have fights next week and the week after that. So we will be back with Line Sniper Fight Night next week, and I hope to see you all there. Thanks for tuning in.